So I wanted to talk a minute, and this will be a pretty short video, but I wanted to talk a minute about reparations and what a lot of the black community is pushing for is that they feel like the government should pay all the black people for reparations. And basically, because their ancestors were enslaved, we should pay them for their ancestors being enslaved. And I want to kind of use a little bit of common sense here to think about this problem and look at where it actually ends up. So the first problem is that no black person alive has ever been a slave. So you can be upset about that if you want to, but none of the black people have been slaves. So for them to get paid for something that their ancestors put up with is asinine. That's the first point. The second point is that I don't disagree that back in the day when the slaves were released, that they should have been given something to help them along in life to get their life going, and so I don't disagree with that. I think that the entire slavery thing was a travesty, and I think that even all the way up into the 50s and 60s, when you had all the civil rights movements and all that stuff, that was a travesty. I mean, everything that has happened to the black community up to the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today, it's been terrible. So I'm embarrassed for the people that used to treat blacks this way. I mean, I don't. It's insane. It really is. It's an absolute anybody that is out alive that participated back in the 50s. I mean, you should be ashamed of yourself, because I can't believe people would treat each other that way. Having said that, though, I want you to consider me. So I have never owned a slave in my life. You've never been a slave in your entire life, and therefore you saying that I owe you money is ridiculous, because I owe you money no more than I've had a slave. And since I haven't had a slave, why am I going to give you money? So the fact that you want money from me and you want to go out and say that I owe you this money is actually insulting, because now what you've done is you've taken somebody that's on your side. I agree that you should have you shouldn't, or your parents or your grandparents or great grandparents, they shouldn't have been treated the way that they were treated. I totally agree. I agree that today that you shouldn't be getting taken advantage of with education. And the Democrats are the ones that are doing this to you, but you vote for these people. And so it makes it hard for me to really give too much sympathy to someone that is voting for the party that is actually causing all your problems. And for the black people that are listening to this video and you're offended when I say that, I would challenge you to actually go look at your Democratic people that you've put in office and ask yourself what they have actually done to help your community. If you can tell me what they've done, I will be shocked, because I watch these people all the time, and it's amazing that every 4 years, education is at the top of their list, and yet education never, ever, ever changes. It's always the same education system and the same backwards bullshit that you go through to get through school, and nothing ever changes. But you vote for these people, so you need to wake up and stop that, first of all. But you've got your education problem, you've got the poverty problem, you got, just all sorts of problems, but there are no solutions to these problems. And one of my problems is that I cannot sit in a room with people complaining about a situation. Like if I'm sitting in a room and my developers are all sitting around complaining about how something doesn't work or how they have this problem or that, I have to shut the whole thing down, because I have to have a solution. Sitting around and complaining about things isn't fixing a single thing. Sitting around and telling me that I'm supposed to give you reparations because you're black isn't solving anything. What it is doing is it's dividing us more. So where I'm on your side, I do see the problems. I do want to find some solutions, but it requires all of us sitting down and saying, hey, here's what needs to happen. But me giving you, let's just say that the government gives every black person alive $50,000. Let's say that they give them $50,000. To most of the blacks, that will blow their mind. They'll be like, oh my God, I'm rich. I've got $50,000. To a lot of you, though, you're making more than that. So you're living in a country complaining about reparations, but you're actually making more money in this country than you would make in any other country in the world. So some of you complain and just don't make any sense. But we give you $50,000. If anybody thinks that within 1 year, that even 10% of the black people that got that $50,000 are still going to have the $50,000, you're a fool. They will go out and buy themselves all kinds of crazy shit, and the money will be gone. So you'll give them the $50,000 and it's gone. But look at what you have done. You've taken somebody that has never been a slave owner, that was against slavery, that's against all of the civil rights bullshit. I'm against all of the stuff that's happened to the black community. But you, by taking my money, because the other thing that you've got to understand is that the government has no money. The government's broke. In fact, the government in reality is beyond broke. They're $25 trillion in the hole. If any of us were as broke as the government is, it would we'd be in jail. Absolutely. So the government's broke. So for them to give you the $50,000, they've got to come to me and everybody else that pays taxes and say, hey, we're going to take more of your money so that we can give all the black people $50,000. Well, now you've taken somebody that's on your side and you've turned me into an enemy, because now I'm sitting here thinking, holy shit, I'm working my ass off, I'm making money, and now these people are taking it to give to people that don't work at all, or that do work and they're still getting the money. So you're going to cause a bunch of enemies, and whether you like it or not, we all need each other to solve problems. The white community cannot solve all the problems for the white community without also solving problems for the black community. And the black community can't solve their problems unless they work with the white people to get help. So all of us have got to work together. This is something the politicians do not want us to do. So you can get mad at me for what I'm saying. You can disagree with what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, the politicians want us to fight. So as long as you keep doing that, you're the problem. You're not the solution. You're the guy sitting in the room complaining about a bunch of bullshit that you can't solve and don't even want to solve. You just want to bitch about it. And that's what all these white punks are doing out here on the street now. They're out here complaining about a bunch of shit. And just a real quick sidestep. Have you ever noticed that when somebody goes up and interviews a conservative on the street, they actually have a fairly good conversation? But if anybody goes up and interviews a left-wing nut job, they don't want to talk. Or if they do talk, they scream and act like absolute idiots. Just something to think about. So back to the reparations problem. So you can't give people money for free that they didn't work for. They're not going to respect it. They're not going to do anything for it. And in a year, they're going to be broke again. Except now, what have you done? You have set the precedent now that if they complain enough, you'll pay them. And so where you used to think you had a problem with a few people talking about reparations, now everybody's going to be bitching about reparations, because now they're going to be pissed off because you didn't give them enough. You didn't give them enough money. That $50,000 was an insult. So you're going to have to go back and have more discussions with them about how much more money you have to pay for them. And it gets even worse, because in 15 years, let's say you settle it all. In 15 years, the kids of the current population are going to grow up, and they're going to think, you know what, this is bullshit. My parents got $50,000 because of reparations. Why? Where's my money? I didn't get any of that money. My dad got it before I was born. Where's my money? I want my reparations for my ancestors being in slavery. And the point is where does this shit end? So some things that you want to solve is, and I'll end this with this example. In Colombia, South America, which is where my wife is from, when I would walk down the street and people are out there, little kids, they're out there, they have no clothes, they're poor as dirt, and they're coming up asking for money and stuff. And my wife used to always tell me, she's like, do not give them money, because as soon as you give them money, they will not stop following you around. They want more and more and more money. They know you're going to give it to them. So every single time you walk by, there will be 10 more kids and 10 more kids after that, because they all want money. And sure as shit, that's exactly what happened over there. Because when I first got over there, I would give them a few dollars and stuff to help them out. But it got to the point where there's just gangs of people following you around wanting a handout. And they get pissed off if you don't give it to them the second time. There's no difference between any human being and any other human being when it comes to that. You always want more. So that is not the solution. The solution is figuring out how to get the black community to work, how to get them to where they buy their own house, so that they respect their house, so that they respect the things that they have, and build that into their children so that they begin to dig out of this hole that they're in. I don't argue that the hole has been created by white people, because the majority of and this is the even funnier part, the majority of the Democrats you're voting for that have been in the House and the Senate for freaking 50 years, the presidential candidate that you're voting for has been in office for 50 years. He was actually the VP of a black president. And that black president and that person, Biden, didn't do a damn thing for the black community. What they did do is they got a bunch of racist shit going again and got the blacks and whites fighting each other again. That's what they accomplished. But they didn't do shit to help the black community. So if you want to fix the black community and you want to get people back on their feet, then let's talk about that. Let's talk about the problems. Don't come to a white person and tell them that they owe you money because you're black. Because I don't owe you shit. I'm here and I'm more than willing to help fix the problems, because there are injustices, there are problems, there are things to discuss. But let's pick one and solve it. Picking 100, you can't solve 100 problems at the same time. So pick the biggest one and let's solve the problem, and let's quit all this reparations bullshit and all this other stuff that we're talking about doing, because none of that is a solution. That isn't even a Band-Aid. That is a pill for turning the entire country upside down. That's all that is. So let's stop talking craziness and let's start talking solutions.